Hey folks, good morning or good evening, everyone. Welcome to a Twitter space with me. My name is Kalu Aja. This is where we talk about money, finance, and of course the economy, how we make it personal for you, and how we make it or keep it very, very simple, right? So today we're going to talk about exchange rates. How are those rates determined? Why is one naira? um, 600 or 500 or 700? Who determines that, right? How does it work outside Nigeria, and what's the interrelationship with that exchange rate and, of course, with inflation? Of course, the backdrop to this discussion is about what's happening to the naira. 2 weeks ago, we had the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, wants to change the color, i.e., change the design of the currency. They have their reasons, monetary policy reasons, also reasons to do outside monetary policy. We've seen the naira rise in the unofficial market, what we call the black market. We've seen it go up, i.e., we've seen it weaken, right? So the dollar has gone as high. I think I saw last time as high as 835 naira, and they start to come down. So we've seen it come all the way from say about 600 all the way to 825. Now start to come down, right? What is going on? What do we expect going forward? How does inflation factor really in all this? That's what we want to talk about today. So, if you allow me, let me give you the theoretical. Let's do the theoretical part, how these things are supposed to work. Then we'll sort of come home to Nigeria and see why the theoretical part, how it's set up to work elsewhere, may not be working in Nigeria, right? So if you're writing down, let's write down four things, right? We're going to do imports and export. Or let's just say imports, exports, and inflation. Those are going to be our three things we're going to use to talk about the theoretical part of exchange rate and how they're determined. Now let's take a country. We could take Nigeria, for instance, right? Let's take Nigeria and let's take cassava. Let's say, for instance, that the world suddenly discovers that cassava has this cure for maybe cancer. So it becomes very, very expensive, right? So cassava is now needed by the entire world. And Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava on earth, right? We produce cassava. I didn't say export, we produce a lot of cassava. So what happens to the naira? We use the naira in Nigeria. So what would happen? So what would happen is this: everyone is going to come to Nigeria and start to buy cassava from Nigeria, right? So how will they buy that cassava? Will they? There's a lot of cassava in my village in Ohafia. How will they pay those farmers in Ohafia? Well, those farmers use naira. Those farmers use naira, right? So the foreigners from America will come to Nigeria with their dollars. They'll go to their bank, maybe, I don't know, go to any bank, exchange their dollars for naira, and then run to up to Ohafia to buy cassava. What this means is that the banks in Nigeria will see a lot of inflow of dollars. So when the banks see a lot of inflow of dollars, what will they do? They will lend out those dollars to importers and guys that want to do dollar loans. So when there's a surplus of dollars, what happens to the price of dollars on the street? It will go down, because demand and supply mean that if you have more supply of something, then the price will come down as long as that supply can exceed the demand, right? So because there's a lot of dollars in Nigeria, because those foreigners have come to Nigeria to buy cassava, then the exchange rate of the naira becomes stronger, right? That means dollar is going down, right? So they go buy the cassava and they export it. So as long as they are buying that cassava, as long as Nigeria is exporting, what happens to the naira? It keeps on going up because there is a lot of supply of dollars to Nigeria from the foreigners that want to buy our local cassava. So more buying of local cassava, the value of naira keeps on going up, the exchange value of the dollar keeps on going down. So this is scenario number one. So what happens in our half year now? All those farmers now have a lot of money. Before they were selling one bag of cassava for maybe 1,000 naira. Now they are selling one bag of cassava for maybe 10,000, 50,000. What do you think is going to happen in Ohafia when they have this surplus inflow of money? Well, you're correct. You guessed right. There will be quote unquote inflation in Ohafia because now everyone has got cash. But everyone has cash. Everybody wants to buy a fridge, an air conditioner, a brand new car. But the supply of those things are not a lot in Ohafia. So again, they want to buy the fridge, but they don't have fridge in Ohafia. So what happens to the price of fridge in Ohafia? It goes up. So you then see inflation going up. When I mean Ohafia, I'm talking of Nigeria, guys. So you then see inflation going up because you have a lot of inflow of dollars into Nigeria, which has been exchanged to Naira. And then the guys that export the cassava then have Naira to spend. If there is no supply of what they're going to buy things with, then there will be local inflation in Nigeria. So when there's inflation in Nigeria, what happens to the price of that same cassava? That cassava that people are buying, what happens to the price? Again, you guessed right. The price of that cassava will go up. So the price of the cassava that the foreigners will come to Nigeria to buy would go up from that 1,000 to 10,000. So then what then happens? The foreigners will no longer buy Nigerian cassava because it's expensive. If they bring in $1, they used to buy 500 naira worth of cassava. Now with the same $1, they can only buy 300 worth of cassava. So what will they do? They'll go to Ghana or they'll go to Thailand and try to buy cassava from Thailand because Thailand's cassava is produced cheaper than Nigeria's cassava because there's less inflation in Thailand. So what then happens? So all the foreigners then leave Nigeria. They no longer buy Nigerian cassava. So what happens to the exchange rate now of Nigeria? You then have high inflation in Nigeria, but you also have a very, very strong Naira. So you have a strong Naira and high inflation. So the guy in Ohafia now has got dollars in his pocket and high inflation. So he can't buy local cassava because local cassava is expensive. So what will the guy in Ohafia now do? He will now import cassava from Thailand. Why is he importing cassava? Because it's cheaper. Remember, his cassava was cheap. Foreigners came in, bought it, the price went up because there was not enough supply. The price went up. His own local cassava is no longer competitive. So it's cheaper for him to simply go to Thailand and import cassava, which is what he does. So Nigeria then moves from a cassava growing country to a cassava importing country. Why? Because our currency, the Naira, is very, very strong. So imports are cheap for us. So when we start to import, what happens? The Naira becomes weaker. Remember, the Naira was weak before the Americans came to buy the cassava. It went up because they were buying cassava with their dollars. They brought dollars to our Nigerian banks. Nigerian banks gave them Naira. Now it's the reverse. Now the local Nigerians are going to the banks and saying, we want to get those dollars that the Americans gave you. We want you to give it to us, right? So as the banks are releasing those dollars to Nigerian guys to import cassava, the value of Naira falls. So dollar rises again. And then when it rises again, what happens to inflation? It starts to even go up more and more. Because when we import that product now from Thailand, we now have to exchange it at a weaker Naira, which then means we're importing that inflation from Thailand. So you see the thing with this exchange rate, inflation would occur both ways when you are producing locally and when you are importing. What do you guys think is the problem with this scenario I've painted? Where do you think we went wrong? Did we go wrong when the Americans rushed to Nigeria to buy cassava? Or did we go wrong when we started to import cassava? If you listen to the story, I know I'm trying to really simplify a very, very complicated macroeconomic process. But if you listen carefully, the problem is the supply of cassava. We don't have enough cassava in Nigeria to supply the Americans. That's why the price went up. If we had enough cassava to supply the Americans, then the price will really go up as much. Then that means that we're able to keep our currency, the local naira, it won't inflate. If we keep our local currency low, then we get more and more Americans coming in here to buy cassava. So our naira becomes, quote, expensive because it rises in value, but we don't get that local inflation. That's what's happening in China. So China imports a lot, which means they take their local currency and buy dollars. So when they do that, the value of that currency falls. But they bring in those inputs into their country, then they export finished products. So they earn back their dollars at a higher rate. So their currency goes back up again. They've done this over the years that they've accumulated 3 trillion in dollar reserve. This is the surplus that they've earned from imports and exports. So look at our story about Nigeria. Is the problem the imports or the exports? That's the story is really that we are importing more because our currency got expensive. That's the theoretical part of what we're talking about. That when you have a currency, you really have, if you demand local dollar, if you hold a dollar in your pocket, you are importing. It doesn't matter if you go to the port to import. It doesn't matter. As long as you hold a dollar, you are demanding dollars. If you hold naira, you are demanding naira. So in Nigeria, why do you think the dollar has gone high to say 850 to $1? Because more Nigerians are demanding dollars. That's the same thing in North Africa. The more Nigerians demand dollars, then the dollar price goes up. So why are more Nigerians demanding dollars? The same example we gave. Because it's cheaper to import the cassava from Thailand than to make the cassava in Nigeria. How is this possible? Well, there is power supply in Thailand. There is lower cost of funds in Thailand. There is no insecurity in quotes in Thailand, right? There is really lower cost to do business. If you're a farmer in Thailand, you get better incentives than if you're a farmer in Nigeria. That's why their cost has fallen. Hence, the Americans are no longer coming here to buy our local cassava. So the exchange rate is really driven by imports and exports. The more you export, the more dollars you get. The more you import, the less dollars you get. And the exchange rate is driven really by, so the supply is driven really by the internal conditions, your interest rate, your inflation. If SMEs in Nigeria are able to produce cassava, then the price of cassava will fall and the foreigners will come here and buy. A few months ago, the Nigeria had the largest exports of cashew nuts. And I asked an agri guy, I think he came on the space. I said, why did we suddenly have this huge exports of cashew nuts? What happened? And he explained to me that because Naira got devalued, the foreigners left their traditional market where they buy cashew nuts in West Africa. I think it's Equatorial Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire, something like that. And they all came to Nigeria because it was cheaper to buy cashew nuts from Nigeria because the Naira had been devalued. That was a month ago, right? So we got this inflow of dollars to buy our cashew nuts because we reduced the exchange rate of the Naira. It's the exact same thing. Before I started this topic, I put up a banner, and those are the exchange rates for Nigeria in September 1983. If you look at that paper, as I put it up there, is on my tweet feed. I'm going to share it again on this space. The US dollar was exchanged for 1 naira and 50 kobo. So if you had if you had 1 naira, 50 kobo, you would buy $1. This was September 1983. So I asked the question, was this good or bad for Nigeria? If you look at it critically, this was very bad for Nigeria. Lots of Nigerians look at this and say this was the good old days when we had a dollar going for a naira. No, guys, this was bad. Why is it bad? Because at a dollar to 1 naira, we were making imports very, very cheap. So why would I grow cassava in my village if I can simply take my $1 and import cassava from Thailand? That's what this exchange rate means. So when you make your currency very, very cheap, then imports become very, very cheap. So your local industry suffers. So the question is going to ask me that, but Nigeria has got a higher rate of exchange rate. So why is their currency falling? Why Nigeria's dollar naira rate is very, very weak? So why are we not exporting? That is the problem. The dollar rate in Nigeria is not low because of a planned strategy. It's simply low because we have no manufacturing capacity. We have not developed our SMEs to export, increase supply. That's what's going on, guys. Let me stop here. There's a lot I would have loved to cover, but I'll stop here just to let's get the conversation going back and forth, and then we can cover more. But I think the summary of what I'm saying is this: if you have a very, very expensive, or what we call a very strong currency, where you have, like in 1983 September, you had 1 naira 50 kobo going for $1. What you are saying is that you are encouraging imports to come to your country. Remember, the dollar is what we call the reference currency. When you want to import, you import and export using the dollar. That's your reference. So if you can import it very, very cheap using that dollar, you would import more. If the dollar becomes expensive, which means it's say 1 naira or maybe 200 naira to $1, then you are incentivizing your local guys to produce, because now if you export more, you get more of that reference currency. Everybody wants the dollar. It's not because the dollar is US is better, but the dollar is the reference currency for export and for settlement. So you need the dollar. It doesn't matter if you like the US or you don't like the US. Iran, North Korea, even the Taliban, they all use the dollar. It's the reference currency. When you trade, you want to get the dollar. The dollar, look at the dollar as gold. It's not pegged to gold, but it replaces gold. Before there was the dollar, the pound, and the sterling, right? What did you do? You would sell and you will get paid in gold. Now, or gold or silver or whatever. Now is the dollar. So you want to have an economy that you attract more dollars in. And you do this by creating lower cost of production in your country and making your currency weak to attract those folks to come to Nigeria and buy cassava. Ike, what's up, man? What do you want to talk about? Let me have you on mute. Hi.
Hi, quite interesting, but I like the way you kind of make it easy for everyone to follow and understand the logic behind it. Um, I think the core message though is that we're not producing as we should. We're not able to produce to take care of our immediate need and to even export, and as a result, that has a very very huge impact on our economy, on our finance, personally and as a country as a whole. But the bit where I still get a bit lost, but it didn't specifically mention that, is how does this actually relate in terms of fiscal policy of the government? How does the fiscal policy of the government and even the monetary policy of CBN actually affect it? Because um, those they are not in isolation. If you get what I'm saying, even though I quite agree with you that the bulk of the matter is this, okay? But the fiscal policy and the monetary policy of the government actually plays a kind of an important role in terms of how we manage that. And then the other bit again that we always overlook again actually has to do with the ease of doing business in Nigeria,
Yeah.
which is basically saying that how is our society organized? So in Nigeria, for instance, our postal services don't work. People don't have standard address. You say, what's your address? You say, off this street, close to church, close to somebody's house, close to, So it's difficult to post goods, to send goods to ID people. People don't even have identification. So our society is not generally organized. Therefore, it makes the ease of doing business difficult. It makes it difficult to even create within Nigeria. So everything is very, very expensive. So it becomes cheaper to actually import than to produce. But I would like you to kind of, if you have the time or if you have thought about this, to kind of, if you can create a similar scenario to just show how the fiscal policy and the monetary policy actually has a role to play in all this. Thank you. I hit my mic for now.
Yeah, you can hang on there as well. So just for folks to follow what you're saying. So the fiscal policy is the taxation. So what EK is saying is this: if the executive, the federal government wants to create policy, right? They tax you and they build a road. They tax you and they build a port or an airport. The Central Bank of Nigeria does the monetary policy, money. So they are involved with the exchange rates. So in Nigeria, what is going on is that the fiscal side, the executive, and the monetary side, the Central Bank of Nigeria, they are not really talking. They are not really talking. And I'll give you a good example. The president says we want to diversify. So he's saying we want to diversify from crude oil and want to do into agriculture. What's that for? Probably for exports, right? But then you see the federal government will shut the borders because what are you exporting? Not just crude oil. You want to export agricultural products as well. So yes, you can export through the sea, but the borders were shut. That's number one. Number two, if you want to export, then you cannot have a fixed currency that is very, very strong, which means that nobody is going to export cassava if they are told to pay to the Central Bank of Nigeria at 435 naira. That's why you see central bank writing memos every day, right, in quote, right, saying, "Hey, if you don't remit your export, we're going to fine you." Nobody's going to remit because they can sell that same dollar on the streets of Lagos for about 600, 700. Why would they give to the Central Bank of Nigeria for 435 or 448? That's the problem, that the fiscal and the monetary have got to talk. If we want to diversify into agricultural exports, then our currency must mirror that policy. So we can have, like they will have the importers exporters windows. Open that window up. Say, let that window become the black market rate in quote. Then the federal government can have its own rate that it uses to do its own strategic investments. But the importers exporters window should be a totally floating rate. So that way, if I export cassava, I sell at the exact same rate that I get from the black market. That's how you kill the black market. Then the central bank can go and say, we want to buy from you if they don't have enough in their own strategic dollar reserves. When they sell crude oil, it flows to the Central Bank of Nigeria. But if I sell cassava, let it go to the importers exporters window. Let other importers go to that same window. So if you want to import rice, you go to that window, and the price should not be fixed by the central bank. This is the policy that the policy is not agreeing with the intent of the federal government. The central bank is supposed to be independent. They're not supposed to take orders from the federal government. They're supposed to manage inflation. The federal government's job is to spend, because remember, they are politicians. The central bank is not a politician. It's supposed to manage the inflation caused by spending in the economy. So this is the problem. The exchange rate of the country should mirror the intent of the country. Look at the yen. Look at the South Korean currency. Look at the Vietnamese currency. It's very weak because they want to encourage exports. So they use their currency to drive the economic plan of the nation. But if you go to some other countries like Saudi Arabia, they peg their currency to the dollar, like UAE, Qatar. It's pegged. Why? Because those countries are oil economies. Even though they are exporting, they want to ensure that their crude oil, which is the crude oil economy, is tied to how they get their forex coming in. They're not exporting anything from Saudi than crude oil. So they peg their currency to the dollar because that's the policy of their government. So for Nigeria, what do we want to do? Do we want to do import substitution or do we want to do export? Whatever it is we want to do, then the currency has to reflect that. There's nothing good, or there's no good rate or bad rate. Floating is not good or better. It's just what's your objective? What do you want to achieve? Then you get it. Did you have a comeback to that, or should I go on to the next person?
I think you should go to the next person.
Gotcha. All right, Kazim. Hey, Kazim, how you doing? Kazim?
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
All right, thank you very much. It's really a nice eye opener for me, and especially the time that we use to buy the wallet. I
Kasim,
really love it.
the audio is not that good. Either you got a back noise. Can you help us out? Kazim? Okay, let me take Dan. Dan, how you doing, sir? Dan Adam. Dan, how you doing? You've got the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, what if the CBN change its policy and it change it to the system where they export and they receive in naira, just
Yeah,
like the
I hear you.
Russian government did? Like, hello?
I hear. Yeah, I hear you. Good question. Good question, Dan. So you are asking why can the Central Bank of Nigeria ask for foreigners to pay in naira instead of
In
dollars?
naira
Because if they
instead of
naira, good. Yeah, I'm just so if they pay in naira, then the value of the naira will go up. That's your question. I get this question a lot. So good question. Let me explain why. Why not? Right? It depends on your policy. The economy of Nigeria is driven by imports. Imports of what? Let's just say PMS. The fuel in your car, the diesel in your office is all imported. So when we export crude oil, we earn dollars. Then we use that same dollar to then go and import PMS. Just an example, PMS. So if we insist that they pay us in naira, it will help naira go up. Then we take that same naira and exchange to dollars and buy PMS. So it doesn't make any sense. Russia was able to tell everyone to pay them in rubles. This kept the Russian ruble very, very strong. I think right now in the world, the ruble is number one or two in terms of strength to the dollar, number one or two. But the Russia can do this because Russia doesn't really import a lot of things. They're not importing their basics. They don't import food. They're not importing fuel. They're not importing cement. No, they're importing chips. They're importing cars. They're importing lots of Starbucks. But the basics of life, they're not importing them. And even if they want to import them, they have 600 billion in foreign reserves, which they can use to buy from China or India. So number one, we can't collect export proceeds in naira, number one, because we are importing a lot in Nigeria. It's not that imports are bad, but we are importing inputs we have no business importing, especially PMS. So if we can stop importing PMS, we can stop importing food. You can ask ECOWAS to pay you in naira if that's your plan to have a strong naira, and it can work. That's the simple answer, Dan.
okay, thanks.
You're very well welcome, sir. I've got Ayo Ajilore Sinosoro. Hi, Ayo, can you hear me? Go ahead and speak, sir. Go ahead.
Apologies, I actually requested in error. I am here to learn.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, so guys, I got you. So since I don't have anyone requesting, so let's sort of talk about what's going on with the naira. Last week the naira went up from it went up from 825. I think it's now at about 7 or so, and it's rising, right? So what's going on? No matter what you hear, guys, this is very, very basic. If the naira is going up, it's only because of one thing: there's supply of dollars in the market. That's it. There is a supply of dollars in the market. If there's supply of dollars in the market, or there's going to be a supply of dollars in the market, then the naira will gain value. So if the naira is going up from 800 to 700, it is because there's new supply or there's going to be supply in the market. I've seen some commentary about the exchange rate in the US, that the US released their inflation rate. And because the inflation rate was released, it caused the interest rates in American dollars to start to fall. Right? I've seen that. Or the expectation is that the interest rates in America will start to fall. Hence, the dollar lost value. I think the dollar has fallen now the lowest in about 14 years. the dollar has fallen the lowest. That was as at Friday in about 14 years. Is this fall in the dollar affecting the Naira exchange rate? It's difficult to tell. What are we saying that the guys on the street saw the fall in the dollar abroad and said, okay, we're going to we're going to reduce our exchange rate for dollar because we think interest rates in the Fed will go down. Remember, the Fed has not taken a decision. The market is saying the Fed will reduce rate. They have not taken that decision yet. So I'm not sure it's the Fed decision. I think there's supply in the market from somewhere, and the folks that are aware are basically reacting to that incoming supply. We'll see in the next couple of days. But overall, there's 20 trillion. It's small. I just use 20 trillion. There's 20 trillion of new Naira printed without backing from crude oil. This just means that there's more supply of Naira chasing dollar. All this tells you is that long term, unless Nigeria is able to export, you can't avoid it. It's going to be a weak currency. It's going to be a weak currency. There is no way around it. You can't be patriotic about it, right? The market will do what the market does, which is discover a price for your assets. Ike, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I wanted to just chip in a little bit because I initially believed that the Naira redesign is going to have a very massive negative impact on our exchange rate. And you actually made me think deeply about it when you pointed out that largely is our crude, the stealing of our crude that's going to impact that. They're going to be determinant. I think this week there was a news around earlier this week that pointed out that our production is going to go up slightly to about 1.1, 1.2 million barrel per. And I think that is what actually affected the Naira. So people can see.
So say it again. You said what, the 1.2?
Yeah, between 1.1 to 1.2 million per barrel. That is the news that came out. It wasn't very strong. It doesn't sound very convincing, but once I saw that news, the next day, the Naira started gaining against the dollar. So which showed me that actually people can see that they were going to have increase in the terms of our dollar inflow. So it makes sense that the Naira dropped slightly.
It can just be clear. What Ike is saying is that because the Naira, if you guys don't know, right, the Naira is really a derivative of the Brent crude. If Brent crude goes up, Naira goes up. Naira is really that derivative of Brent crude. The problem we've had in the last, I would say, 24 months is that because we have not sold oil, even when the Brent crude goes up in price, it doesn't affect Naira anymore because we have, give or take, about 700,000 barrels shut in. Is either stolen or just not being pumped. So that correlation unlocked, right? So Ike is saying that because people are reading that the 1.2 million, that the oil export is going to go up to 1.2 million barrels, what that means is that the central bank is going to have more dollars. If the central bank has more dollars, they are able to defend the Naira value by selling dollars to guys that want dollars. Ike is a stretch because I know that for now, the central bank itself is struggling to meet even the airlines, their request. But what I know is this: the only way Naira can gain value is if there's a supply of dollars to the market. So somewhere there's supply or there's going to be supply. That's what's going on. But again, that high price of 850 is speculative. The Naira is not weak to the point of 850. I don't think it's there yet, simply because of remittances. There's still a lot of Nigerians remitting money home to Nigeria. So not yet at 850. That's just my view. Let me get.
But Kalu, just before you drop that, but despite the remittances, though, CBN keep printing money more aggressively, and I think they are printing. I'm not trying to dumb down my maths, but I do think they are printing more aggressively than the amount we were trying to send back home, and I think that is going to impact the dollar as well. Let me just leave it there for now. So thank you.
You're right. Imagine if the central bank did not print 20 trillion. The Naira would not be even at 500 or 600. So you're right. It's really the central bank is, in one way it's fighting inflation, in the other way it's building inflation. So it's doing two things at the same time. It's raising rates to fight inflation, then it's printing money to spend on, So that's the problem we're having. That imagine if we didn't have the printing of the naira, then the naira would not get to 850. It wouldn't get to 850. Let me just get this guy. Jack Alltrade, how are you doing, sir? You've got the floor.
Very well, thank you. Thanks, Kalu. Um, yeah, I mean, summarily, just like you said, it's a very simple demand and supply issue. We can speculate all we want on the trigger points, but in any market that you see wild jumps like what 40%, 30% in such short time frames,
Uh,
it's not reflective of the long lasting or rather macro image of the market. So I wouldn't even put, if we're speculating, right, on why the price of the naira dropped in the black market from 800 plus to 700 plus, it would not be related to speculations as regards how much crude we're going to be what was it called, producing on a
yeah.
daily basis, or what the price would be in the future, right? If the black market players have the impact that we say they have, they are very short term. These are people that are making profit off of the spread of their buy and sell, which is
Mm,
typically within the 5 to 10 naira window.
mm,
So for them, it's somebody brought in dollar. How can I quickly get it into profits? Like,
mm,
so if somebody else is offering to buy it, they add the spread and they make that money, and that's what's reflecting on the black market. So what's reflecting on the what's it called, actual exchange rates, would be more reflective of the macro picture, because we know that there are forward markets that entities use to protect their interests. Those ones are there longer term. If you're in business and you're an exporter or whatever, or a producer in Nigeria, and you repatriate your money out of the country, right, you'll be hedging against some wild swings in the future. So those are more reflective. So my take is, to put it very simply, the CBN announcing that they're redesigning currency, and the basis for that explanation, I don't even believe that anybody that is stocking currency in any significant volume is holding it in naira in the first place. Just because within Nigeria you can go to Zone 4 or Ikeja in Lagos and get any amount of dollar that you need and go and put it in your bunker, right? So I think anyone that is holding any substantial amount of money in the first place, which is basically sucking out money out of the economy, is not even holding it in naira in the first place. And if there was someone holding it in naira and the CBN makes that announcement to spook them, they will go to the market and demand dollar, right? Because it's naira that you are redesigning and you're going to withdraw out of the economy, not dollar, right? So what that's going to do to the dollar in the short term is it's going to put pressure on the dollar. Everybody's going to go
Let,
to the
let, let me
market.
take you up. Let me take you up on that. Let me take you up on that. Nigerians hold a lot of cash, especially 2 months to an election, in dollar, in naira.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I agree. But
Yeah.
however, I'm saying the data that is reflected from the banks to show that this amount of money, the size of the economy is this, and
Mm,
this small fraction is what you have in vaults. Um, to give a concern for oversupplied naira is
mm.
not something is not data that is collected within the space of a month or even half a year.
That is true. But
Exactly. So so
the
so
CBN is saying that a lot of cash is not passing through the banks.
yes,
Hence, monetary policy is not effective.
yes,
So
I
we know
agree.
that cash should not automatically pass through the bank. So look at what they are making you. They are saying every coin, every currency paper you have, wherever in the world you have it, it has to come back to a Nigerian bank before January. So
Yes, but
they're going to effectively know by February 2023 the total amount of currency issued in Nigeria. They will know that by February 2023.
2023.
Mhm.
Exactly. I mean, I do think that the policy, while I think that the measure is is a good one. I think it's ill-timed. And rather not to play the devil's advocate or to adopt a cynical position, I think basically what has happened is somebody has funded a predetermined expense in naira and has funded it for cheap. Because if someone was holding dollar, and that's reflective with what has happened to the rates. Given our short history in the past 1 year, when it jumped from 400 to the deeper 500 range or early 600 range, what happened was that happened over the space of 2 weeks, and in the next week it dropped, and then it went up again. And I can predict that what's going to happen now is it's going to jump and even exceed the upper limits, upper 800 limits that it hit
Yeah,
last week.
and to be clear, I tweeted it out. I said very conspiratorially, I confess that if you had $1 million,
Exactly.
change it last month, you got maybe 600 million. But if you exchange it last week, you got 800 million. So you got extra 200 million.
Exactly. So if I'm the financial advisor for the APC, I'm just using I'm not a party person. I'm not. This is not politics for me. For me, it's about educated guesses. If I'm the financial planner for APC, and I've envisaged that in the run up to the elections we're going to spend 3 billion naira, and I want to fund that for cheap. And we already have, because I know, and I know this for a fact, because people close to government and everything know that they're typically holding dollars, right? And I want to fund that. And I say, look, if we put out this information or put out this scheme, as well intended as it may be, the dollar is going to shoot up. And then if we take our dollar to the market, we'll flood the market, we'll sell it, we'll get it for cheap. So if we had $1 million for ease of calculation, we're holding $1 million, we put out this word. It's very easy how to spook the market sentiments in the market with news, right? And the dollar goes up to 800, and we know that when we take that to the market, we'll sell it, there'll be a margin of 50 naira. That's a 50 million naira, and then we'll buy the dollar back, right? Because we're holding our money in dollar. But we've bought the dollar back, we still have our $1 million, and all of a sudden we have 50 million naira to spend on the build up to election. So
that's my take as well.
Exactly. So that's what I think happened. We can
Yeah.
speculate all we want as regards the long-term effects, which sadly for me, I think because while we're doing all the policies and there are all the measures to get us to become a productive state, it's a long-term thing. We're going to see that only long-term, right? Businesses are unable to repair, just like you mentioned with flights. I'm not even in state now, and I know that if you're checking for flight prices, anyone can take me up on that. If you open a website now and try to buy flights, say Air France to wherever, you see exorbitant prices. If you have a VPN and you change the address and you're buying the flight as if you're going to pay from your destination, say the US, for example, you see that the prices are cheaper. So basically, these companies have priced in the risk of not being able to repatriate their money. Exactly.
So last question. So that means that, right, if the dollar is going down, but I can't buy it, is then what? There's something not right there, right? If I can buy it, it should be going down, right? So if it's going down and I can't buy it, that means there's dollars in Nigeria, but not in CBN.
Oh yeah. And that's the problem, and that's what we're saying, that there's dollars in the market that is outside of the instituted bodies that are supposed to account for it.
Gotcha.
Right? So people are holding onto more. There's no velocity. See, that's one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria. Everyone can talk of how poor we are or how rich we are. I give a very simple example. You have two buildings. A father and a son are in both buildings. You play the role of God. You put 100 naira in one building, put 100 naira in the other building. In the first building, the father has some value to his son. The son has some value to him. Even though you put the 100 naira in the father's hand, they will find a pricing mechanism, and that 100 naira will be going between themselves as they are servicing themselves, right? In the other room, the son is completely useless to the father, and the father has to feed him, and the father produces all his needs himself. Which of the rooms will prosper better? It's the first room, even though they have the total sum of money in their economy is the same. The first room will prosper better, and that's why the velocity of money is more important than the size of the GDP or whatever. And that's one of the problems that we have in Nigeria. The velocity of money. Sorry.
I got you. And just to
Yeah.
be very, very clear, right? What I'm saying is that in the end, if there's no supply of dollars to the market, guys, whatever you're seeing in the market is just film trick. There has to be supply for it to
Supply.
be.
Exactly.
If it's
Exactly.
not, if there's no supply, whatever you're looking at is a movie. Let me get
Yes.
up in here, right? Let me
hmm
get. Oh, no, so you've got your hand up. Ayo Ajilore, you want to go?
Sorry, I'll just say one thing before I
Sure,
close out.
go ahead.
Sorry, just one point I wanted to highlight. And I've not really dug into it, but I knew that the CBN prevented Binance, for example, from people from being able to credit Binance, right?
Yeah.
And buy dollar.
Mm.
I know that has been. I did not see any release from the CBN saying we have reversed that policy, but I know that as of now, as me and you are speaking, you can credit Binance directly from your bank. I noticed this about last week or a few days ago.
And I also noticed that they create Binance created a Naira pair or whatever.
Exactly. So what that means is there is another outlet for people to get money. I don't know what the regulatory scope or how they are monitoring that or whatnot.
So
But
it's two ways now. So say it is. So that means money can come in and go out.
yes, money can come in and go out. But we know that overall there is more money going out of Nigeria than there is coming in.
No, but this is critical now. If money can come in, that's why dollar is falling.
Yeah, but if there is more money going out, it means that the demand for dollar is higher.
But we're in Christmas. So what I'm saying is that yes, there's always a demand, but if money can come in, all those boys from Atlanta, from Malaysia will send money in. Their P2P volume has not gone down. P2P volume is very, very strong. So if they can bring money in from P2P to Nigerian banks, that's why dollar is crashing, not exchange in America. That's what's happening. If we take this point now, if P2P can go to Nigerian banks, that's why dollar is crashing because now the P2P volumes are coming
Up.
into the Nigerian banks.
Yeah.
Abi?
Yeah.
No, Kalu, just to correct you guys, I don't think
Yeah.
it goes to Nigerian banks. I use Binance as well.
Uh-huh.
So the money end up staying in the hands of individual. It doesn't get to the bank because what you
But
do is
what
that.
about bank, okay?
The
It
bank is the
stays with
custodian
you,
for the
Abi.
individual,
It
so
stays
it's
with
Huh?
going to the bank.
So
it stays with you, right?
yes, the money stays with the
That's what
individual.
I'm saying. So you can take it to a bank. You can take it to an aboki and sell.
Okay, so you ultimately, that's what ultimately
Yeah.
what happened.
Before you could not. There was no connection between you and the Nigerian banking Nigerian bank. CBN says the couple. Now we are hearing that that couple is back on. So can you credit your Nigerian bank from your Binance? Can you do that, Ike?
No, what we usually do is that whenever we do a transaction from Binance, we just don't indicate that it's crypto. So we always be doing.
Don't indict yourself, Sha.
Well, you can't. They can't.
Does your
It's fine.
friend
It's fine. They can only.
This is what we usually do.
What I'm figuring out is that Binance has created a Nigerian pair. So what I'm figuring out is can a Nigerian now, if I do dollar to Naira on Binance, what do I do with it when it's in Binance? Can I take it to my GT Bank? What can I do with it?
You must take it to your bank.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you spend it within Nigeria at the end of the day.
I can't take it. I can send it to Ike now. And Ike will
Yeah,
give me.
yeah. But ultimately, it's your bank will eventually hold it if you're going to spend it.
Okay, good point. Okay,
Thanks
Ayo,
for the opportunity, guys.
hang in
I'll
there. We
mute
might
myself.
need you again. Just hang in there. Ayo Ajilore, how you doing, sir? You got the floor.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, sir.
I bet I wanted to listen earlier, but now that I found myself here, I think it is important as well that I contribute to the shape of the conversation.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, earlier in the year, that was Q1 2022, we got info that we had in excess of $5 billion coming in form of diaspora remittance for that quarter. It's on the CBN website. Also, there are indications that that number might have improved in Q2, and then of course in Q3. Aside that, it is also important that I set the tone to my own to the information I want to share now. When we said, or what we saw earlier, which is the drop in value of the Naira, as
Go ahead, sir. Hello. Can anyone hear him? I can hear him.
I can't hear him either.
Oh man, we lost you. You were going somewhere with that. We can't hear you. If you can just do a hands up and I'll add you real quick. Kelvin, you got the floor, sir.
Kalu, hi.
I'm
I came up. Good evening. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, sir.
I came up because of Jack of all trades. So
I was looking.
interesting
I came
conversation.
here because of you too, Kelvin.
Kelvin, you were in is it AIT or so talking about this?
Yes, this morning.
Okay, what did you find out?
Yeah.
What can you tell, sir?
Well, I can tell you that it's not been confirmed because the CBN hasn't released a statement, but there was a $1 billion intervention by the CBN in the FX market in the last 48 hours, which is the reason why you saw they basically just wanted to pull the rug from everybody's feet.
Boom,
This,
boom,
this,
boom,
this
Exactly.
really,
boom,
yeah.
boom.
So at the end of the day, I'm still not optimistic, and I'll tell you why I'm not optimistic. Because the four major sources of FX for CBN to maintain stability are diaspora remittances, FDIs, NXP proceeds, oil receipts. Oil receipts
It's gone.
are out because of DSDP, direct sales, direct purchase for subsidy, which is a scam, by the way. NXP proceeds are out also because the companies will not repatriate their FX into Nigeria because of the wide difference between official and parallel markets. Nobody's going to take 65 naira incentive in ROT 200 over a 400 naira spread, you know. FDIs is out also because institutional investors are complaining they can't bring in
No
their
money.
FX and they register with no tap CCI at the official window.
Sure.
So the only viable source of FX right now is diaspora remittances. You know, right now there is a $10 billion backlog for repatriation of profits from A, from Q, from M that CBN cannot fill. And the reason also why the forwards market at NAFEX is not working is because the market makers that are supposed to be counterparty risk players, they can't find the forward curve. So they're like, look, if we're going to dip our legs into the ocean, we should be able to tell where it will touch the bottom. So they are not willing to play. So if you go to the FX market, so the forwards market, and say you want to buy forward contracts of 5 or 10 years to hedge your risk of fluctuation, you won't find counterparty to hedge.
CBN is saying that if you want to buy for 4 years, you pay 618 naira for 4 years.
Even at that, at certain volumes, you won't find counterparty liquidity to buy.
Yep.
So this is the problem. This is the problem. And if you go back to the fundamentals, if you go back to 10 years, 2012, for example, when this exchange rate was still under 160, and the CBN had the policy of plus or minus 30 naira on a daily basis within which they will intervene, the spread and the bid and ask spread was between 30 naira, 4 naira, 5 naira the most. Yeah. Today, that bid and ask spread is over 400 naira.
What?
How do you like the bid and ask spread? Look at official market is 437.
Okay.
Parallel market went to 900.
Okay. Gotcha.
The real exchange rate in Nigeria is the exchange rate that has liquidity to back it. Every other thing is government subsidy.
True.
So how can you have a market where you don't have a forward guidance? The whole essence of markets is that there's a forward guidance. We should be able to tell what will happen in 2 years. That's how we plan. Yeah. How can you have a market where if I wake up tomorrow morning, I can't tell whether Naira will go to 850 or it will come down to 500?
Give me a second to explain what you're saying. Just give me a second, so folks can catch up. So in Nigeria, right, we have what's called a forward market. What that means is this. If I am bringing in dollars from America, let's say I'm an investor and I want to buy Nigerian cassava, I can go to the Central Bank of Nigeria and tell Central Bank of Nigeria, I want to bring in $1 million, but I want to take my $1 million out in 3 years' time. And the Central Bank of Nigeria will give you a contract saying, if you come back to us in 3 years' time, we will sell you dollars at this price. So if you go to Google FMDQ, yeah, you can find the Nigerian forward rate. I'm going to actually put on the Twitter. I'll put on Twitter space now. That's where you can price how much you can buy dollars 3 years from today. So what Kelvin is saying is that even if you go and you see those rates in the market, if you try to buy them, you don't find a counterparty that can sell dollars to you. So Kevin, please go ahead.
Yes. So at the end of the day, Kalu, this thing boils down to fundamentals. Yes. If you have a fixed exchange rate mechanism and it's not working because the difference between your official and parallel market is so wide that it's even at some point gone above the difference between the official market and parallel market went above the price of the official market. Yes, people cannot plan. So what's the solution? The solution is for you to float it. If you float it, number one, what you're going to do is you're going to automatically raise your government revenue to GDP ratio automatically because the government will earn more money from any revenues it gets in FX. Number one. Number two, what you're going to do is you're going to tell institutional investors you're back in business. If they can bring in their FDIs, register with NOTAP, CCIs, and they will have a forward guidance on how the market will go. So, for example, if venture capital A is going to invest $25 million in fintech B, and they are bringing their money into Nigeria, you're going to force them to register with NOTAP at 437 or 441, and then they cannot plot a graph that tells them where the rate will be in 5 years when they want to take profits out or when they want to exit. They can't plot that graph. They can't plot that graph. They cannot plan. So the risk of the external risk of devaluation and currency depreciation is higher than the internal rate of return.
So Kevin, just saying that we should unify the rates and floats, or do you just want to see just one, maybe the import window floated? Which would you go for?
Kalu, the way to really align the economy, yes, is to float the rate because the worst has happened. 10 years ago, people were saying that if you float the rate, what if it gets to 600? Well, today it's over 600 naira. So why don't you remove the guardrails and float the currency and allow the market, the willing buyer and willing seller, to determine the exchange rate?
I hear you. I'm just talking devil's advocate for the SME boys, right? SME guy in Ohapia wants to do cassava. How does he afford dollar at 1,000 naira?
So, Kalu, I do not think that if the rates are floated, dollar is going to get to 1,000. And the reason is because of what I said earlier about the four major sources of FX. Right now, out of the four, only one of them are functioning. Dangote Refinery is going to come on stream in the next 8 to 12 weeks. That is going to take $10 billion of outflows from Nigeria. And then Nigerians will really see that the 66 million barrels of PMS they say they are paying subsidy on is a fraud. Because Nigeria doesn't consume more than 30 or 35 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. Yes? So when you have when you converge the rates by floating it, you're going to activate these other three sources of FX, which are your NXP proceeds, your FDIs, CCIs, and then when the PMS subsidy goes out of the window, you're going to start getting all that oil receipts from NNPC paid into the CBN account again. You're going to have more liquidity, and that convergence, that demand and supply will match in some way. So I don't think it's going to get to.
I want people to follow you. What you're saying is this, right? When Nigeria floats the exchange rate, which means that the central bank will no longer determine the exchange rate of the naira to a dollar. That what will happen? Remittances will increase. The news from Dangote will also increase. This would then mean that there will not be a 1,000 to $1, but it will actually come down because supply will force the exchange rate down. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's supply and demand equilibrium we're talking about here. Yes, and Kalu, if I'm going to go back deep into macro and explain the rule of 69 that simply calculates your level of the time it takes compound interest, the time it takes for any investment to double, and then the rule of 72 that calculates the level of inflation. So you basically like divide 72 by
the interest rate.
your interest rate, and then you see that whenever your inflation goes up, the MPC comes and then jacks up the interest rate to be able to align your inflation to interest yield curve. And you see that there is a strong correlation in that graph between the rule of 69 and 72, inflation and interest. Yes, you know very well that the higher your inflation goes up, the shorter it takes for the inflation rate to double and for your currency to lose 100% of its value.
Say it again. Say it again so I can say it again.
See, so you have 69 and 72. 69 calculates interest, the time it takes for your interest, this thing to double.
Okay.
72 calculates inflation, the time it takes for inflation. Currently in Nigeria, it takes 3 years, 4 months for inflation to double by 100%.
Okay.
At current inflation level that we have, right? You simply divide 72 by 20.77, which is the current inflation rate. Yes. And you know very well that as inflation keeps climbing, the MPC comes and raises the interest rate to be able to align that inflation to interest yield curve.
Yeah. Go ahead. Kevin, go ahead. Did we lose Kevin again?
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Oh man. I was going to make him. So he's essentially saying that if the exchange rate falls, that the rate of inflation.
These are deep macros. So this comes back to the issue of monetary policy and fiscal policy on how macroeconomic policy affects your exchange rates.
Kevin, we lost you a bit there, but let me just. I think what you're trying to say is that if the exchange rate comes down, that it would affect the inflation rate as well. To also push it down as well.
It will affect the inflation rate. The reason is because 70% of your inflation is determined by the price of energy and food. Kalu, 70%. Look at the money, look at all the FX that goes out to import diesel. All the FX that Jet A1 is over 930 naira per liter today. Look at all the FX that goes out to import PMS. If you do backward integration for these things and you're producing in Nigeria, all that FX stops going out. So the weaker the naira, the more the impact on your exchange rate. Sorry, the more demand for these things that you're bringing into Nigeria, the more it impacts and it drags on your exchange rate. Because what you have is that you don't have enough supply to meet up with the demand for FX in Nigeria. And then you have so much of this thing prioritized to bring in these products into Nigeria, and then it affects your inflation. Because if, for example, I was importing goods at 400 and all of a sudden I'm importing goods at 800, I will price in the cost of importation into my selling price, and that's going to affect the calculation of inflation in Nigeria.
I hear you. So I mean, it's coming back to the exchange rate. That if we can get the exchange rate to talk, right?
Yes.
With the fiscal side, let's say we have our ports working. Let's say we have refineries working. Then the exchange rate comes down.
Exactly.
Then that inflation comes down. Then it becomes a vicious circle where we say, okay, rates are coming down, inflation goes down, inflation going down, bringing exchange rates down lower. That also takes inflation lower. So it's self-fulfilling, it keeps on going on and on.
Kalu is like a spider web. It's like a spider web, and it's so interesting. It's like a spider. Everything is connected.
I got you. Kevin, hang in there. Let's get Oluwatosin to come in here. Kevin, hang in there. You and All Trader, hang in there. Oluwatosin, you got the floor, sir. Oluwatosin Akinbolumo.
Yeah, you're correct, Kalu. Good evening.
Great. How you doing? Good.
I'm good. Yes, I'm gonna be very brief. I'm gonna ask a question. Earlier in the month, sometimes around November 2, 3, Nigeria, Lagos to Edinburgh, Lagos to Glasgow flights was around 293, 295,000. I was to make a trip again, and then I tried to check it again 2 days ago, and I was seeing it at over 600 on Qatar Airways. Now, my question is, does the black market affect price or airfare? Because
no. I hear what you're going to. Essentially, you are saying if the airlines are maybe basing their ticket sales on black market or blah, not what's going on is that, like Kevin has also highlighted it, the airlines are factoring in, are building into their cost of the tickets the fact that they cannot get their money out of Nigeria. If you pay for a ticket in Glasgow or in London or online, not Nigeria, and you pay, because they're going to get their money instantly, then they don't factor in the cost of interest on that money that Nigeria is owing them. That's what I think is going on. If you pay in Nigeria, they are not going to get their funds in the next maybe a year or two. The money that they've been owed to them, they just pay them 50% a few months ago, right? They are still owing them about 50% and they are still flying. I saw Emirates saying no more flights. So that's what the problem is. If you owe me, I charge you interest. How is that interest calculated? I increase the cost of what you're paying. So instead of you paying 100 naira for gala, I will ask you to pay me 200 naira for gala, and I'll say 100 naira is the cost of interest that I'm paying to the bank. That's what's going on.
All right. Now, Kalu, now what I'm saying is, it happened between, for me, this difference between a week and a half or so. I'm talking about November 3rd and today.
Mm-hmm.
So I was saying that affected, this space of about 7-8 days.
Yes, because what's the cost of look at where did they get their dollars from? Those airlines, where did they get their dollars from? They were paid. The CBN governor went to America. I saw him saying he had settled 50% and I was going to settle more. How do they fund diesel? They buy forward diesel, right? So if interest rates are low and they buy forward diesel or forward aviation fuel, they pay lower. Interests are going up now, so they're going to pay more. So they have to come back to Nigeria and say, well, we are paying more. You haven't paid us. You have to pay us more. They will increase that internally built-in interest cost to Nigerian buyers. This only if you buy in Nigeria, remember. If you buy in Ghana, you don't pay this.
All right, thank you.
Abi? Kevin,
yeah, well said.
Yeah, it's the cost of not paying your debt. If your government does not pay its debt on time, you pay. That's really what's going on with the airlines. Chief Agbo Chinonso, how are you doing, sir? Mr. Agbo, how are you doing?
Fine, Kalu. Good evening.
On the floor.
Oh, thank you. Just to buttress what Kelvin was saying earlier, I think for me, everything still boils down to demand and supply. So if we end up floating like he was proposing,
Agbo, you've gone off. I can't really hear you. And if you can hear me, please give a hand up and I'll just add you back. But I really can't hear you, what you're saying, yeah. Yale Chuck, you've got the floor, sir. Oh, you just dropped off. Got you. Let me see if I can add you back real quick. If you can hear, just do a hands up when you're back and I'll add you in. What's this? Yoris Abel, you've got the floor, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you too?
I'm very well, sir. Go ahead.
Please, I have this question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead with your question, sir.
I have this one question. If I'm exporting, so my client, am I going to quote to him the exchange rate in parallel market or just the CBN rate?
Good question. So he's asking if you want to export cashew nuts, should you quote him the dollar exchange rate for the CBN or for the parallel market? I would advise you, sir, to quote the parallel market. Why? Because that's the real market-driven interest rate. That's also the rate that you can have what you call the replacement cost built in. If you quote at 435 or 448, which is the official rate, you might not get dollars at that rate. So quote him more. If he pays and CBN says remit, you can remit 448 and you have a spread right there. So it's to your advantage to quote the black market rate if you would pay that.
All right, thank you, sir. And sorry, I have this question again.
Yeah, good.
I think the solution for inflation, I think generally is to increase interest rates. So I want to ask, is the federal government doing that, or I mean, what's going on in regards to that?
Yeah, they've been the central bank has been increasing interest rates. We call it in Nigeria, we call it the monetary policy rate. They've increased that from 13 to 14 to now 15 to fight inflation. But you see, the problem is that where the financial sector in Nigeria is not as connected as you have in America. When rates are increased in America, it affects everybody because everyone has a bank account. When I mean everyone, a lot of people have bank accounts, have loans, have mortgages. So there's a direct correlation between how much you can have in the economy, the cost of that funds, and the Fed rate. Not so much in Nigeria. There's a lot of transactions that happen outside the banks. Less than 5% of Nigerians have ever gotten a bank account. So when Central Bank of Nigeria increases interest rates, it has no effect outside Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and all those cities. That's the problem the central bank is having, that they cannot control money supply by simply monetary policy. That's what's going on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Super. Thanks so much, sir. Okay. All right, Tomiwa, hi, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Kalu, this has been a very educative discussion.
Thank you.
And I think it's an amazing one. I also want to say something that will be funny for that last question. I want to say that as a rule for me, if somebody is paying me in dollars and my cost is in Naira, I'm probably going to estimate using the CBN because then I can make more money.
Sure.
But if I'm the one paying in dollars, then we are going to use the normal parallel value. But that is just for joke anyway.
I agree with you, bro. I agree with you completely. You have to same way if you run a business, you want to make sure that you are collecting your cash immediately, but you are paying on LPU. That's the same thing. So it's good advice. You don't release cash from your pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, but and then one of the things that I just wanted to say is that because I've been opportune to work in an organization where we pay expatriates, we recruit a lot of expatriates for a lot of companies, and it's really a huge headache on its own. It's not only individuals suffering from all of these forex imbalances, even Nigerian companies are suffering a whole lot from all of the forex imbalances. So what we used to do sometimes in our contract is to have like an open thing, whatever the parallel market is for that day is what you use to invoice the client, and then you get paid. But what will happen is that by the time you get paid, things might have shifted also. But these are risk in those kind of businesses, and I know our finance people have different ways of mitigating them. I also wanted to add that point. That's why I raised up my hand.
Yeah, good call, because people always ask, what rates do you use? I think Nigerians always say they want stability, not just the rate, that they want the stability of the exchange rate is more important to them. If I know it's 1,000 naira or 500 or 100, but let me know what it will be. Like Kevin is saying, let me know what it will be for 4, 5, 10, 15 years. So if I'm making an investment, I can price it appropriately. Imagine in Nigeria if you went to import cars from Japan and your bank quoted you 300 naira to a dollar. That was this year. This year, dollar was about 400 this year, right? Now it's almost 8. So how do you sell those?
Yeah.
I mean, already you've lost money. So how do the banks hedge? If the banks can't buy forwards, how do they hedge? I saw Fidelity Bank paid off its FX Eurobond. How do you hedge? If you take in dollars and you lend out to a Nigerian manufacturer, the guy of no fault of his invests locally in an alcohol plant like Kevin is doing in Nigeria, then dollar goes to 800. What do? You've taken a loan at 400, now you have to pay back at 800. Just on the exchange differential, not profit, not loss. Man, hug an entrepreneur if you see one. Those guys are going through, they're going through some serious stuff in Nigeria. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, you just painted a picture of one thing that I'm dealing with. We have about 10 cars that came in from Canada about 5 months ago. They are practically unsellable now. Like, it's crazy.
Wow.
Because,
What do?
like, it's a huge headache, really. So, but I have two questions outside of all of this. Because for the past few weeks, I've been thinking, okay, what's the solution? And I know things can be complicated in Nigeria. Of course, I'm in Nigeria, but I also want to ask two questions. If banks add BDC licenses, do you think it's going to help?
Yes.
Then the second one will be,
Go
what
ahead.
is the
Go ahead.
embargo? Why are banks not having BDC licenses?
But there's no difference. If you have BDC or not have BDC, there's no difference. The issue is, where do you get your dollars? If I send money, okay, Emeka in Houston sends money to Mama Emeka in Nigeria. It doesn't matter how Mama Emeka gets it, but will she get it into into the economy? And will it go to the central bank is the issue. I can put the dollars in my pocket and fly with it and give to Mama Emeka. I can do that, right? And Mama Emeka can take that dollars from my hand, change it into dollars with their bookie, and pay Naira into her bank account. That also happens. What CBN wants and what every nation wants is that you won't do it officially. You send the money from your Bank of America directly to GT Bank. The Mama Emeka gets it. So it doesn't really matter what we call it, BDC, banks. Is the dollars hitting the central bank's foreign reserves? Because if it is, then the central bank can defend the Naira, it can fund imports. So right now, go to P2P. P2P's volumes are nearly as high or higher than the import-export volume. Kevin, is that correct? Do you have any idea, Kevin or the trader group, do you guys have any idea of that?
No,
Come
I
with the
don't think
question
there's a
again.
data yet though, but I think it's quite high because for the past 1 year plus, I've not sent money back home without P2P. So it's
Okay.
quite high, yeah. But because
And
of
before
the CBN ban, it's difficult to track.
Yeah, and before P2P, how are you sending money to Nigeria? Before P2P?
Oh, just use any app. You just find the cheapest rate on the app. Any app that you can find one that is offering you
Apps,
cheapest rate.
you know, those apps were, as you know, were linked to Nigerian banks, right? So you transfer your money. The apps give you Naira here, but the apps hold the dollars there and all that. So to me, what I'm trying to say is this, right? It doesn't matter whether the banks have BDC or don't have BDC. Nigeria needs dollars officially to go to the Central Bank of Nigeria. That's how we pay our imports. Banks don't pay imports. Central banks pay for imports. If you order an Arsenal jersey today and you pay that website from Lagos on your phone, it is actually the Central Bank of Nigeria that will credit the UK bank to credit that store in the UK, who will then send the jersey to you. You don't pay directly. That's why when we freeze central bank's assets, you can't do anything. It doesn't matter if you have the money in Nigeria. If the central bank cannot pay, you haven't paid. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It
Great.
does.
Great.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to point out is because I'm a digital marketer, I also build websites. Like just today, because I don't have a lot of faith in the local hosting company here. I've gone through a lot of hell with them. So I use Bluehost, which is hard. As of today, I saw that they've doubled their price, which I can practically cannot cope with any longer. It used to be better when we could pay with our cards, and the bank does the conversion. But now
Yeah.
you cannot do that. You have to buy from their bookie, take to your DOM account, get a dollar card, and you pay charges all the way. And it's really, really crazy.
Question for you. If you could get the dollars, right, but you pay 10 Naira extra, but just the same dollars, the same process, but easy on your phone. But instead of paying, what rate do you pay on your phone right now? What rate on your phone do you pay for these guys you're going to leave? What rate do you, is it a black?
So the last time, although cheaper has started or stopped working, but the last time I used cheaper, I think it was about 800.
So the black market rate, really?
Oh, the black market rate. I think it's about. Although I've not bought recently, but with what
No,
I was.
no, what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So cheaper was selling to you at the black market rate.
Yes, they
So why
do.
are they leaving? They're making their money. Why are they leaving?
No, I think there's a CBN regulation that affected all of them. It's not only cheaper, even Wallet.ng,
Mm.
Bata, all of them. They were the ones that we used to use before.
The CBS all pay their own dollars, i.e., they should bring their dollars from America here. They can't give you CBN dollars. They want CBN. CBN wanted to carry the dollars from America to Lagos and pay. Okay. All right. So, but
Yes.
Chike, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, all.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for the platform. So I would like to point some things out. According to what Tomiwa and the last guy talked about, as regards when you have a contract or a project which you would have to execute using dollars, maybe you need to import some goods from outside the country in order to execute that project. I think it's best that the exchange rate, the part where the exchange rate is in the contract, should be kind of open, because I have a client that he won a contract with the federal government that was during Jonathan's regime, and as at then the exchange rate was not more than 200 naira to a dollar, but till now he's not yet done with the project, and then he's having to battle with getting a concession from the central bank through the ministry that he's executing the project for, and then going back and forth because the ministry is saying that these are two different governments. So if possible, I would advise anyone that has to execute projects, depending on the time frame, to request for a kind of open check as regards the exchange rate. And then as regards the demand for dollar, I would say that the main problem is that there's a lot of pressure on the dollar. One, people schooling outside who can't easily pay their Form A because the banks are not really coming forth with these payments. Then people that are importing goods into the country that also have to source for dollars in the black market. And then people that have inflows who are not willing to let go of these inflows. So what they do most times is they take loans. There are loan offerings from banks where you take loan against your dollar balance. So you don't touch your dollar. What they just do is they calculate whatever amount of dollar you have and give you the loan in Naira. So the dollar is being hoarded, then there is a lot of demand for this dollar. So I guess that's also a reason why the dollar to Naira rate is very high. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. I was really interested in when you said, just to make sure people understand what you're saying if you have a contract with a foreign guy and you pay them in dollars, you should try to make sure you don't put a fixed amount in the contract, but you should sort of language it to say, we'll pay you based on prevailing rates plus this or plus that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just so people follow you clearly. Okay, thank you so much, Chike. Appreciate that. Fola we have 35 on the name wrong way.
Yeah, thanks, Kalu.
Hi, Fola, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Miss, I do apologize. Yes, I can, but if you could speak up, you're a bit distant, I would appreciate that. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, is this better? Sorry, I'm driving.
Go ahead. I can hear. I'll try to just translate. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thanks. Again, great space, and just for us non-financial type of guys, I was wondering if Kelvin made some comment about the four main ways that foreign exchange comes into Nigeria. I was just wondering if you could do a recap of that. I found that quite interesting. And then secondly, I think you had made a comment about paying in LPO. Paying in LPO. I mean, what exactly does that mean? If you could just explain further. And again, thanks. I like the way you always try and break things down so that lay people can follow. Thanks.
All right, Kevin is still here, so Kevin I'll ask him to re-explain, but this time you make it slower and explain more detail. But what I mean is, if you own a company, right? If you own a company, if people owe you, you collect your money immediately. You don't offer credit. You don't offer anyone credit. If you want to offer credit, you tell me that they pay more or they buy more, things like that. But don't offer credit, especially if you're an SME. But when you want to buy from people, give them a local purchase order, which will say, hey, I'll pay you in 90 days. So if you own a restaurant, if you can, tell the woman supplying you rice. I'm so sorry, this is so mean. Tell the woman supplying you rice. If you supply me rice, I'll pay you in 90 days or 60 days, right? So you can take the rice, you can trade, you can make money, right? But if somebody is owing you, you want to make sure you collect your cash immediately. Companies, SMEs die because they have no cash, not because they have bad vision or bad staff or marketing. Once you have no cash, you die. So if you're an SME, you want to watch your cash very, very critically. An LPO just means you give somebody a contract that says, if you supply after 90 days or 60 days, I pay you. If you supply Shell, if you supply all these big quoted companies in Lagos, they don't pay you cash same day. Those big companies don't pay you cash. They would always tell you supply and would pay you after delivery. This is this, that's that. So you should behave like those big companies. Don't let cash leave your balance sheet or your bank account. Keep it very, very tight. LPOs, use other people's monies, fund your business, and then at the very, very last resort, you pay, right? Kevin, he wants to know these four methods you talked about, how cash comes, the FDIs, the remittances. Could you just take it again? This time maybe a bit slower and a bit shorter, just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and also explain the concept. Get it, please.
Actually, if I'm not able to explain it in the way you'll understand, please, you do well to help me out. But I'll try again. So, there are four major sources of FX. And the CBN operates like a fixed exchange rate model. And that model was based on what we had 10 years ago, which is on a daily basis, the exchange rate must not cross plus or minus 39, bid and ask spread. That was the assumption. We're not there anymore. And what were the sources of FX for the CBN then? Number one, oil receipts. Number two, NXP proceeds from companies that export and then bring in the dollars to originating banks in Nigeria. Number three, FDIs from institutional investors who bring in non-speculative foreign direct investments and register with an agency of the government called NOTAP, a certificate of capital imports. And then number four, you had diaspora remittances. Now, the dynamics has changed. And the reason why the dynamics has changed is because, number one, and this is something that is not being talked about often until now because the government had hoped that a lot of people don't understand how this thing works so they can get away with it. In fact, even as soon as September this year, like 2 months ago, MFLA still borrowed the federal government 749 billion naira through the Ways and Means lending window. So for context, Ways and Means lending is like advances that the CBN gives to the federal government as a lender of last resort, not as a lender of first resort, a lender of last resort. If the federal government is out of options for temporary advance, imagine you have a business, you have a cash flow with your bank, and then the bank decides to give you a credit line of overdraft and say, okay, you know what, you want to pay salaries or you want to pay for something very quickly and you don't have maybe 15 million naira. They give you an overdraft for 3 months, for example, and they prorate the interest rate. The overdraft is not supposed to last more than a particular period of time. It's a short-term facility that the bank has given to you. So that window, based on the CBN Act, amended in 2007, says that if the CBN decides to give the federal government overdraft, it should not exceed 5% of real revenues for the previous accounting year. For the previous accounting year, 2021, 5% of real revenues stands as $450 million. Guess how much that window has given the CBN and the federal government? It's giving it 48 billion US dollars.
What?
What's the difference between 450 and 48 billion US dollars?
Wow.
The difference is like 47.5. Now, that continuous printing of money that they don't have, because the money is money that you print, you basically like just, credit the federal government with money you don't have because the CBN has the power to do that. Yeah. It devalues your currency because if you incur so much debt that you don't have money for, especially when you don't have foreign reserves to back the debt that you're giving to the federal government, what happens is that inflation goes up because you have so much cash in the system that you don't have equal production output value for to equate for. And what happens is that you have so much cash chasing so few goods, which is the reason why, when I did the channel's interview a few weeks ago, I talked about how the number of currency notes in circulation doubled over the last 3 years. So what MFLA is doing with the currency redesign is his attempt to correct so much ways and means loan to the federal government that double the amount of currency in circulation and cost a bubble of inflation. And then as inflation goes up, I was explaining earlier to Kalu that you have a rule of 72, rule of 69. Rule of 72 basically calculates the time it will take for inflation to double. And then rule of 69 calculates the time it will take for an investment to double. Interest and inflation yield curve, they go pari passu. So as inflation goes up, the Monetary Policy Committee at the CBN, they raise the MPC rate, the MPR, monetary policy rate, to align that curve so that you don't have a negative return on yield. So what happens basically is as inflation goes up, the time it takes for your inflation rate to double, your purchasing power to reduce, and for your currency to lose 100% of its value shortens. So you notice that over the last 10 to 15 years, that time has gone from 14 years down to 10 years, gone down to 7 years. Now it's now 3 years, 4 months. It takes a shorter time for inflation to double and for your currency to lose 100% of its value. That's what has happened. So for you to correct the situation you have today, you have to focus on curbing excessive lending in violation of the Ways and Means window, Section 38. Number 2, you have to work on both monetary and fiscal policies to ensure that you have FX coming in through diaspora remittances, FDIs, NXP proceeds, and oil receipts. And 2 right now are knocked out. 3, in fact. Number 1, oil receipts are being wiped out by your subsidy, which is a scam, by the way. Institutional flow of capital, FDIs, is being wiped out by the fact that these investors are saying they are not going to bring their money to Nigeria if the difference between the official market and the parallel market is 400 naira. NXP proceeds also, the RT 200 program CBN launch is a failure because the companies are saying that how do you expect us to bring back, repatriate our NXP dollars into Nigeria for 441 when we can buy equipment abroad, bring it in, sell it at street value, or divert it to a foreign account to settle our offshore dollar obligations.
Kevin, I'm counting 3: FDI, remittances, NXP. What's the 4th one?
The 4th one is diaspora remittance. Oil receipts, sorry. Oil receipts that are being wiped off by DSDP, direct sale, direct purchase.
Answer the gentleman. So essentially, FDI, if Nestle brings in money to open up a new factory in Ogun State, that's FDI. They bring in their dollars, Nigeria gets that dollars. Then they build their factory in Ogun State. That's FDI. Remittances, Emeka is sending money to my Emeka. That's 25 billion minimum that is flowing. I think that's Nigeria's largest FX source after or competing with crude oil remittances. So Nigeria exports crude oil and Nigerians. Then you have the NXP. NXP, is that for the stock exchange? The FPI?
NXP is companies exporting and earning USD. They're supposed to bring it back to the originating banks, but they've refused to do that because they are saying that if you bring it back, the CBN will force you to sell your dollars at the official market. And they're saying they can't do that.
Right? So we can just say trade flows. Then we can say that
exactly.
Trade can be non-oil and oil trade flows. So to the gentleman asking, we have trade flows exporting crude oil, exporting cashew nuts, that's 1 and 2. Then we have remittances, Nigerians sending money home to Nigeria. Right now, I thought a candidate called it the welfare remittances, welfare, but nothing has really come big like that. But of course, we have FDIs, foreign direct investments. When Nestle is building a factory in Ogun State or SAB is building a factory in Anambra, that's FDIs. So Kevin that's really what.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Kevin, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chama, you've got the floor. How you doing?
Hello. Hi, Kalu. Thank you so much for this time. I'm definitely learning a lot.
You're very welcome.
So I think one of my questions was about if pretty much about why they're printing so much naira. But I think Kelvin did a bit of expatiating on that, so that kind of cleared. I guess they're just trying to, help the federal government. Yes.
Kevin says about $48 billion. Did it shock you?
Yes, like why? So it's this. So first of all, my question would be, then I would say, if why didn't they do this scheme of redesigning the naira before now? If that would help to bring in the cash that they're looking for into the banking system, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, why are they leaving it till really late? If that would have helped them before having printed the naira earlier on. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. I feel like it's a little too late. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me the reason, I'll tell you it's because the central bank was on, should we say, comatose for 2 years while the central bank governor ran for the presidency. He took many decisions that were not monetary policy based, independent monetary policy based. For instance, raising interest rates. When inflation was still about 15, 14%, he should have raised rates there and probably done this then, like you're saying. It could have had an effect, right? Governing for the. Then he has been printing money in inordinate amounts of cash. I quote in naira, 20 trillion. Kevin is quoting in dollars, 48 billion. 20 trillion can build refineries. 48 billion can build. So why didn't we print money and build refineries? I don't know. Okay, if you go to the DMO, the Debt Management Office website, you can see exactly where our borrowing has been from and where we have borrowed it, where we have used it for. I did the study. 13%, the number one and number two are what we call, number one is what we call budget support. 13%. Number two is what we call economic, 13%. So 13 is 26%. 26% goes to budget support and economic. I don't know what that is. But 26% of the borrowing, the borrowing from Nigeria has gone to economic, in quotes, and budget support, in quotes. What's that? I don't know. So, Choma, looking at them, that's really the answer, right? When you print money, they are trying to stop the government from borrowing. So the central bank is trying to help the federal government by borrowing, by printing money. It shouldn't do that because it's supposed to be independent. What the central bank should have done is to raise interest rates to stop the federal government from borrowing. You know that from 2014, right? 2014, when Buhari took over, his recurrent expenses has gone up, but his revenues have come down, which means all they've done is that revenues went down, but they made sure they borrowed money to print salaries, pay pension and allowances. This is CBN records I'm quoting. The recurrent expenditure did not go down, it actually went up. We've gone through two recessions. We've gone through. Choma, I can hear you very well. So that's really what's going on, Choma. Choma, if you can't hear me, go out and come back in again. Does that work for you? All right. Hey,
sorry,
John.
Kalu, sorry, please. Can I just button something?
Jump in right ahead, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about, borrowing and whatnot. And that's it's a, economic philosophy. It's a different argument entirely. But I just wanted to point out that, borrowing by itself is not exactly the problem. When the CBN prints money for the government, it is borrowing essentially from the public. That's why there's a public debt and whatnot, right? However, what's important is what the debt was used for. I'm just going to say there's no economy that stands in isolation, right? So when you're talking about inflation and everything, seeing as everybody more or less reports to the dollar, it's important for the public whenever they're analyzing how is US doing. What is their public debt versus ours? And is the inflation reflective really of our relative? Because when you're analyzing economies, you're analyzing relative positions. Inflation is not something that we can do without. It's impossible to have an economy without inflation because basically the CBN injects money into the economy. When you put things in, it's not everything that comes out. There are some that stays in it. In process engineering, you call it an accumulation, what stays within the economy. And, you know, our money, the money that we call money, right? The paper, the fiat currency, is not really, the concept of money and currency is something that a lot of people do not understand. Anyway, before I get into a rant, what I'm simply saying is the debt itself, the CBN borrowing money, that's not exactly the problem. The problem is, what was the money used for? There's no one that borrows money like the US, like developed countries, right? But if the money is
Jack
used,
of all trades. Jack of all trades. I'm sorry, but that
yeah,
the CBN borrowed. There's a problem there, and the reason why there's a problem is because when you do things, you have to go back to the Constitution, and you can imagine banks. I'll give you an example, and I'm sorry when I go on a rant like this, I like to extrapolate to give you context and perspective. So take the capital adequacy ratio, which basically calculates your total regulatory capital by your total risk-weighted assets, for example. And you look at tier one banks that says if you don't have capital adequacy ratio minimum 15%, when you divide that, you have a problem. You have a systemic risk to the banking sector. And you look at Access Bank, for example, that has 18% of all banking deposits with a CARO at 17.5%. For me, that is a problem. Okay. Now, let me come back to the point. The point is that there are rules in the CBN Act, in the BOFIA, that guides how things are supposed to be done. When you violate the CBN Act, Section 38, there's a reason why Section 38 is there. And that reason is because they know that if you violate that window by printing money and giving the federal government more than 5% of real revenues for their previous accounting year, what is going to happen is you're going to overheat the system because there's going to be so much cash chasing too few goods, and inflation will be the result. Now, inflation is not a bad thing, but where it's bad is when, for example, the time it takes for your purchasing power to lose 100% of its value, all of a sudden drops from 10 years to 3 years, 4 months. How can you be losing 100% of your purchasing power in 3 years and 4 months? That's a problem.
Kevin, but I mean, Jack of all trades is saying that what we are borrowing to spend on is really a big problem. And the data supports him because look at what is 26% of the borrowing, nearly 30% has gone to economic and budget support. We all know what that means, salaries. So we're borrowing not just 1 naira, we're borrowing billions. And now we can't even service the debt with the total income that Nigeria is making. We've never had this before. At least we borrow to pay salaries, but we pay back. Now, according to the Minister of Finance, we can't even service the debt that we've borrowed on. That's big.
Yes, Kalu, Jack of all trades, I have to apologize to you for butting into the conversation. Please don't be offended.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
What I'm
totally.
Yes, what I'm basically trying to say, Kalu, I understand that 26% is budget support. Okay, and this is the reason why I have an issue with the Development Finance Department of the CBN that controls NISA. Yes, I have an issue with Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. I have an issue with Anchor Borrower Program. In fact, I saw news today that they've suspended funding for the Anchor Borrower Program because there is a huge loan impairment from debtors that don't want to pay back the money to the central bank. And that's a hole on the balance sheet of the CBN. So you can imagine Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's looking at CBN's balance sheet and they're saying, oh, okay. So you printed all this money, gave to the federal government, and then decided to do direct intervention programs, and these people can't pay back. And a lender of last resort that is not designed to be a commercial bank turned into a commercial bank, lent money to people without collateral or security. You're not able to recover the money because you don't have the mechanism to recover the money, and you have to write it off. That's a systemic risk to the economy and the banking sector. And then they devalue your currency rate. Your sovereign rating. And that affects the company because as they are devaluing your sovereign rating to B3, to B2, to B minus, it's affecting the companies also. Foreign currency issuer, local currency issuer. So for me, I agree with you that there is a problem with how the money is spent. But the foundation of the issue here is that the CBN should not have violated that window in the first place by giving out the money. That's the problem, Kalu.
No, I mean, I think we're all right. I think the problem is that we have a big, huge debt overhang. Let's get John in here. John, what's up? Sorry for keeping you back here. John Appleseed, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Kalu. Thank you so very much for these spaces. They have become a very useful source of vital economic knowledge for me, and I'm sure very many people here. I have a question. So, over the years, following you on Twitter and listening to lots of the things you've been saying, I have come to realize that the government, through the CBN, has been making a lot of faulty policies. They've spent a lot of money defending the Naira. They have refused to float even when that would favor exportation and help earn additional forex to help stabilize the currency. It feels so far like I've been hearing all the bad things the CBN's been doing. And I often wonder, is there any valid motivation for which the CBN has refused to float the currency, or at least float a certain portion of it like you have recommended sometimes? Is there a reason why we have to expend everything we have on our reserves in order to defend the Naira? Or is this just some ego trip like the Nigeria Airways thing, just to say 1 Naira is equal to $1? Okay, even though it's been established that it does not really favor productivity, local productivity. So I don't know what CBN motivation, and I wonder if you have any inkling as to why.
I think it's both things, both pride and the desire to keep inflation low. Because look at it this way, PMS is imported, and PMS is the largest import in Nigeria, is the largest expense of the government. The federation is the largest.
Absolutely.
So if they keep the dollar at 4.34, right, they are able to reduce that cost. That's the monetary and the theoretical, the money part of it. The other part is that it's just pride. I saw Buhari. He went to the Brigade of Guards in Abuja. I've given the story many times for people to understand the significance. Buhari went to the Brigade of Guards in Abuja. The Brigade of Guards are the elite Nigerian army soldiers that are designed to protect whoever the presidency is. Buhari went there and he told the Brigade of Guards that when he was the president in 1983, a coup was launched against him because he devalued the Naira, and what else? He did fuels. So imagine if you're the CBN governor and you hear the president tell the brigade he views the exchange rate of the currency, right, as a national security issue, not a monetary issue. What would you do? You'll be very, very careful. You'll be very, very careful. That's how Buhari sees the exchange. He sees the exchange rate as something that has to be defended as national security. We can't devalue. And you also see him telling the central bank governor, don't give any money for food imports. But we give money to import PMS, we give money to repair private jets, but no money for food. So it's a bit of pride and also a lot of want to keep the inflation down by not allowing those imports to come that are priced in dollars. That's really what I would say, my opinion. Jonathan, work for you? All right, John. Let's get Metaphyso CH. CH.
Good evening.
How you doing, sir? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to contribute to what Kelvin said the other time. I think he only sort of listed the sources of inflow for the government. So I wanted to say, like, on the flip side, you have to measure that, vis-a-vis the sources of outflow as well. You would really realize where the hole is and where the gap is, and that's when you really realize that we're heading into a really bad place as a country. Okay, so if we analyze the sources of outflows, number one would be, say, debt servicing, if that's correct, and then number two would be repatriation of capital by the companies that we have in Nigeria, and another way would be, the government subsidizes Hajj, pilgrimage, and things like that.
How much is that? If you look on the scale of preference, number one way money goes at Nigeria is fuel subsidy. Number one. Really, that's it. If we cut that guy down, We're nearly there.
But how much?
But if we cut fuel subsidy down, we have nearly there, because it takes away all the budget. Everything goes. Kevin just said now all the oil revenues go to subsidy. All. If you take oil and non-oil revenues, debt takes away everything. Oil and non-oil revenues go all to salaries. So let me explain again what I'm saying.
Okay.
Oil and non-oil revenues, debt chops everything. Oil revenues alone, salaries of only civil servants chops everything. So the budget you see is really just noise. You have a budget that the largest expense item is not there. Fuel subsidy. It's not there. So what are we talking about?
So if we're able to cut out fuel subsidy, but how much do you think we'll be able to cut out our dollar outflows?
A lot. That's the number $1 outflow, fuel subsidy. That's what I'm saying. The number $1 outflow in Nigeria is fuel subsidy. Number one.
But our debt servicing is going to rise up to about 8 billion annually by next year. 8 billion, yes. 10 billion each by next year.
Why do we have debt servicing? Because we are taking all the crude oil revenues to pay for subsidy. If we didn't have subsidy, we would take the crude oil revenues and pay down the principal. When Dr. Konjo-Iweala was in Nigeria, she had a sinking fund to pay the principal of issued debt, bonds. Not just to service, you pay down the principal. So right now, when all the crude oil we're exporting, we take the revenues and we pay for import of PMS, which this customs man has said is fraudulent. The customs DG has said is fraudulent. That the NNPC figures are fraudulent. That's what he's saying, not me.
Okay, I probably the numbers will agree with you on that. So I probably have to agree with you. But another area that we're not looking at now, where we're really losing a lot of money, is the fact that the biggest and the biggest companies, that thrive the most in Nigeria right now are foreign-owned companies. So it gives us a negative FDI every year when we measure how much we get in new investments versus how much we lose to the likes of MTN and Ethiopian Airlines, Emirates Airlines.
How do we lose? How do we lose?
Sorry?
How do we lose?
How do we lose? Because the likes of MTN have made their capital investments probably 10-20 years ago. So right now it's not like MTN is going to be bringing new dollars into Nigeria every year now. So it's more of whatever revenue they generate now that they're going to be repatriating. So unless we're able to do to make policies or ease of doing business, things like that to attract.
Look at it this way, right? If MTN did not come, then the cost of doing business would have gone up.
Yeah, I'm not laying blames on the likes of MTN. I'm saying that it's a problem for us that our biggest industries are not nationalized right now.
I hear you. The way you say it, bro. I mean, what I'm trying to say is this, right? I hear what you're saying. In terms of numbers, you are correct that they are taking money out, but they are taking investment returns out. Their towers are here. Their office is still here. Their staff are still here. They are taking what they've made because they invested. The exact same way Nigeria invest in, say, we have a building in New York. Nigeria has a building in New York. The rent of that building comes to Nigeria. US will not say Nigeria is taking rent out of US, right? Because we invested in that building in New York.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't I don't expect us to have a conundrum on this. What I'm trying to say is right now we're having negative FDI, right? So we need to have more. We need to have new companies at a rate that's higher than the likes of MTN. That's higher than
you do it.
The repatriate fund.
You are right. You are right. The way you do it also is to make Nigeria safer and to make cost of production cheaper. Then people will come naturally. Everyone's going to Ghana. I saw the other day Twitter closed office in Ghana. Which means Twitter had an office in Ghana, not in Nigeria. But there are more users in Nigeria than Ghana. But they went to Ghana. So I hear you, bro. Let's get Jesus. J4, how you doing, sir? Mr. J4.
Hey, Kalu, good evening.
J4, I saw your conspiratorial tweet.
Yes. that's just one part of what I wanted to talk about. But thank you always. Your spaces are always a gem. What I wanted to point out here is what you've been hammering on since, which is that I want to believe that people cannot ascend to the helm of our national life and governance by being stupid. It is fact, this is not a conjecture, that our consumption for PMS is at best maybe 35 to 40% of our imports. You have hammered it here severally, even without being an economist. I can, just as a businessman, know that that is a big problem with PMS being our greatest spend for FX. Why will the CBN, the federal government, the DSS, and all the agencies that are aware of this allow such to persist, to subsist? If we can cut down our fuel imports by 60%, our PMS needs will be met. By plugging the leakages going out from the north and from our eastern borders and from the northern borders and all of that. Why will that subsist? That's one. Then two, the small conspiracy theory that I spoke about. I ordinarily will have ignored it, but when you hear something from some people that are not exactly charlatans, you begin to give credence to it. Like I said in the post, I said he said that the recent cocktail of events with the dollar spike, the Naira change, is actually a black swan operation. I just wanted to know the possibility of such a thing, or what virtue or what is defined in such an action if the CBN were to take it. Yeah, we're all designed strictly to punish currency speculators, bankrupt them, and maybe take them out of play going forward.
That's what the guys here, that's why I kept them here. Both Kevin and Jack of Fortunes have said. I said at the very, very top that there is no way Naira can fall without supply from the central bank. Everything we're reading that is in the US is not true. It has to be supply in Nigeria. Kevin is saying that there's been a 1 billion supply, not yet confirmed, into the market. If that is true, that's why the Naira fell. What that tells you is that the Naira's value is just still being managed, right? That next week, after that 1 billion goes through the market, it will keep on rising. And just by way of demand and supply, if you have supplied 20 trillion Naira to the Nigerian economy without corresponding crude oil revenues in dollars to match up that Naira, then invariably there will be a fall in the price of the Naira. You don't have to be an economist to know this. It's just basic. So that's what it is. It is what it is. So I would just say do diversify is the only advice I can give on social media. Diversify your earnings, your currency, your geolocation. That's the best I can say for now. Thanks, J4.
Thank you, Kalu.
Pro B, you've got the floor. B Reche. Pro B, you've got the floor, sir. We're going to talk about 30 minutes. Thanks for Kevin, Jack of all trades, all of you, Ike, hanging in here with me. We're going to hang on about 30 minutes. Jubril Ali, how are you doing, sir? Jubril Ali.
Yes, how are you?
I'm very, very well, sir. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are talking about here. I really get experience on it.
What's up?
Are you hearing me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I say I really appreciate about the resignation of Naira. So I don't have more thing to say about it, but now I get more knowledge on it. So I really appreciate. Thank you guys for giving us knowledge here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jubril. Thank you for listening in, sir. I do. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Pro B, what's up? You want to speak, or I take you off, sir? Pro B. Okay, let me get Shoma back in here. Let me. Okay, Dolly T. Dolly Tology. I am Dolly PP. You've got the floor. I am Dolly PP. Come on, guys, you got to hook up so I can. Dolly PP, I'm not hearing you, sir. Kevin, just a quick one. Let me just confirm. You are saying that is it already out? This 1 billion you're talking about. Where can I find it?
No, it's not confirmed. It's not confirmed, and they don't want to release an official statement because it's intervention, and they wanted to really shock the market. They wanted to take speculators, pull the rug from under their feet. But I have it on good authority.
Well, if that is true, then you know what's going to happen next week. Then, if that's true, you know what's going to happen, right? All right, Chama.
Yes.
Did you want to add anything else? You were cut off last time you were speaking.
Yes. Thanks, Kalu. So I just wanted to find out, right? You had said that a very small percentage of monies, right? I don't know if it's the FX now, if it's, I imagine, it's not being, CBN is not able to track it. That's like news to me because, so my question is, so these DOM accounts, explain that to me. Is it that, you open them in commercial banks, so obviously CBN sees that there are X number of DOM accounts with X amount of monies in them. Are they ever going to get to a desperate place where they would say, I just need to understand the correlation.
We don't like about that because we don't want to spook anybody. But look at it this way, right? If Nigeria sells crude oil, the money account in JP Morgan, that account is called NNPC CBN. It goes to JP Morgan. Then the central bank then has that dollar in America, right? The central bank will then buy the dollars from the Federation of Nigeria and give the Federation of Nigeria Naira. That's what you see, the fact that is shared between the federal government. So we're selling crude oil in dollars. Central bank buys those dollars and gives us Naira. So central bank owns the foreign reserves. That's how it pays for imports, by the oil sales from NNPC. When I send money home, let's say Emeka sends money home to Mama Emeka. Mama Emeka does not want to spend that dollar. She can go to a bank in Nigeria and open up a DOM account, right? That DOM account is part of the balance sheet of the bank because it's not legal tender. It's like so she puts her dollar in a safe deposit box. The bank has it, right? She can go in there. In the past, you could withdraw, you could transfer, you could do whatever you wanted with it. Now, there are a lot of restrictions on what you can do with that DOM account. But that DOM account is not part of the foreign reserves of Nigeria. It is owned by Mama Emeka, sitting in a bank in Nigeria. It's about 10 billion, 20 billion, give or take, right? But it's not part of the central bank doesn't own it. So the central bank not go to that money and use it to pay for imports. If they tried it, the economy of Nigeria would just crash. Why? Because there'll be a loss of confidence. Nobody will trust anymore. That's why they don't touch it and we don't mention it because we want to even So the bank would always come out forcefully and tell you they would never ever touch the DOM account. It's not their money. It's people's personal assets. It's like taking someone's gold. If I take my gold chain to the bank, then the government will come tomorrow and melt the gold chain and say, oh, we have gold reserves. It doesn't work that way, right? Yeah, that's what's going on. So the central bank needs to get that DOM account from the DOM accounts to the central bank. How it can do this is what the folks here, the experts are talking about. It devalues the currency. If you devalue the currency, then Naira goes from what it is today, about 444. Even if it goes to 600, Mama Emeka will now say, I want to go and buy cassava in Ohafia. Let me sell my dollars from the bank. When she sells that dollars, the bank can buy it from her. Then that becomes the assets of the bank, and then the bank can then also sell to the central bank. When you float your currency, what you are saying is that not the central bank will set the rates, but the market will set the rates. So what will happen is that the central bank can intervene in the market. So you see the Bank of Japan will say, oh, we're selling dollars or we're buying yen. They are intervening in an open, free market. The central bank does not set the exchange rate of the yen. But if you go and try them and say you want to do nonsense with their currency, they'll kill you by buying and selling and making you lose your shirt. So think about Soros. He took the Bank of England to work. He made £1 billion personally off them because they're doing the exact same thing Nigeria did. They fixed the price of their currency and they tried to defend it. George Soros went there and sold the pound, kept on selling it till they were forced to devalue. Then he made us money. That's essentially what's going on.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. Hey guys, just to wind down, guys. So I'm just going to add the last speakers, and then we'll just take it down from here. So no more requests to speak. Just going to add this, guys. Iwona, Chai Goz. Chai Goz. You've got the floor, sir. Chai Goz.
Good evening, Kalu.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Good evening, everyone from here. Yeah, Kalu, I always like listening to your speaks, and I get a lot of insight. I want to thank Mr. Kevin and every other person that have spoken. I get a lot of insight. For the past 5-6 years, I've been working with an NGO more of into microfinance project, human capacity development, serving women and the active poor in the villages and rural areas. And most of the funds that we get to fund these people sometimes comes through grants, sometimes come through a loan from foreign partners. And now, when I saw this topic today, let's talk about Naira Exchange and how they are determined. I'm about looking at Naira Exchange and its effect currently, because now, assuming we got loan last year at the rates as it were last year, and now we are trading, we need to pay back, and it's a loan you are paying back with interest. You see, we have actually not going to even be able to pay back the principal that we've gotten from these people. Come to think of paying back the interest. And then also, to get back would be another problem.
Hold on, I'll just understand you. So you got, is it a loan or a grant?
Not a grant, a loan.
So, okay, you got a loan in dollars and you have to pay back in dollars.
In dollars.
Yeah, that's a big problem, bro. You're in a very, very big problem. That's why we have the forward market, right? So what you guys should have done was to have hedged that exposure by buying dollars from the forward markets, right? So just take it down, talk to your accountant on Monday and say you want to buy dollars in the forward markets. The experts are saying that market is no longer viable because you don't have a counterparty, but still explore that. You should have done this when the money came in. So what it means that you go and you buy your forward dollar, so that way you can then pay your Naira and get back that dollar at an agreed price 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead. The market is still 5 years. So try to speak to your bankers on Monday about this. You want to buy your forward exchange rate. Does that make sense? All right, Iwoha. Hi, John, on the floor. Iwoha, I can hear you, but try to get a forward. Talk to your bankers about how you can get a forward dollar agreement to protect your exposure. It's a bit late now, but at least try to get something done on that. Mr. John.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Go ahead, John.
Hello, Kalu. Thank you very much for your very insightful and detailed delivery. I've benefited a lot. Fortunately for me, I run a business in Nigeria. I also have a business outside the country. The challenge has been what the last caller talked about. I have access to raising funds outside the country at about 6-7%, but I can't bring it into the country. How do I pay interest? How do I take it out? I have an opportunity to run things back home where I can make maybe 10, 15, 20, even 30, 40% margin. Yeah. But with the dollar fluctuation, the greatest horror of any direct foreign investment in Nigeria, or bringing in direct foreign investment in Nigeria, is the unpredictable forex market.
I hear you, John. John, and then just
I didn't want to get myself into the trap that the last caller got himself into. So I just avoided those money and do my small business I can do in Nigeria with my funds, however I can get it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very good. But guys, very good. John, thanks a lot. I mean, if you have a dollar loan right now, right, it's a big risk. It's called exchange rate risk, right? To take a dollar loan to convert to Naira and to make do business in Nigeria and then try to go back. You're going to be stuck one way or the other. If you cannot buy forward, right, then don't do it for now. It's the risks are too much now. Perhaps you wait till the new government comes in, then you actually understand what the new government's policy would be. It is just going to be in February, right? So February or June, we'll know what the new government's policy would be. But for now, taking a loan in Forex to change to Naira, then to pay back in Forex, you are taking...
Is a no-no.
Yeah, I would say don't do... If you can't hedge that with CBN, please don't do it. Even if you can hedge, just be very, very careful, guys. Try not to do it, right? All right, super. Let's have John. Hey, T Gold, go ahead, sir. Guys, T Gold, you've got the floor. We'll be done about 30 minutes, guys, and we'll all go. T Gold, you've got the floor. Go ahead. T Gold going once, T Gold going twice. I got Mikhail, Crypto Rabbi, Mikhail C. Bernard.
Hi.
How you doing, sir? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for this space and for this opportunity. So, I'm Michael. I used to do Forex business in Alaba before I left Nigeria after seeing a lot of problems. But basically, one thing I noticed was Nigeria, Argentina, many countries which practice the same pegging of their currency and trying to enforce strict controls, they always end up having the same problems. They always end up creating unnecessary speculation. There are people, I'll say 20% of people that buy dollars in Nigeria don't buy it because they want to import. They just buy it because of speculative reasons. And most people who are hoarding for speculative reasons. But in a situation where you float the currency, remove most of all this fake patriotism, trying to convince people that doing what is not economically viable is being patriotic, and allow people to actually allow the market to flow naturally. You are going to see that most of these problems we are facing of currency instability will stop. In the last week, I heard someone talking about the CBN injecting money. Word on the street I got was that it was actually politicians who were bringing down dollars for the election.
Well, how can they bring down dollars? Explain what does that mean?
I don't know, but there are a lot of people who probably have a lot of dollars stacked.
Okay.
There are things I wouldn't want to go into detail.
No, but you're right. If the politicians bring in dollars, then dollar will fall. So you are right. The same thing Kevin is saying. Dollar will fall. But the point is that dollar fall is not sustainable.
It's not. It's not. Probably by this week, I think, actually what I heard, and I wouldn't want to say much, is that a particular politicians, released a lot of money of recent for campaigns and all the rest.
Yeah.
So that is why the dollar, because they were trying to exchange all the money, everything, dollar went down a bit. They were trying to cash in on the very high rates, and because probably there's not enough liquidity to buy up at the 880 or enough people to buy up, they had to sell at any price, and it went down. But that said and done, I think what we just need to do is to wait till February, because I feel they say don't argue with words, always argue with actions. I feel speculators have really shown the central bank and whoever is coming into government that this system is not sustainable. And most of the losses they would have incurred from people doing arbitrage, doing a lot of speculation, they would have learned from it. So whoever of the three parties wins, hopefully they would have to stop and float the Naira. Hopefully. Apart from one party which
let's be clear. I'll name names. Bola Tinubu says he's going to spend money without a dollar peg. So I'm interested, if he wants to do that, is he going to float the Naira? He has to, because if he's spending without a peg, he can't then peg the dollar, because then he would have two rates.
Exactly.
So that's also what I'm seeing going ahead. I talked about it what had the space, but it would mean that, well, let's leave that alone for now. But Mikel, I think you're very, very correct. If dollars is in the market, the price would go down. And also, let me just make a point again. I talked about if you have a dollar exposure. Julius Berger is a German Nigerian company, right? They do a lot of business in Nigeria. They expatriate their profits to Germany. They have a lot of connections in Germany. They quote, so their profits are in Naira, but they quote in euros, right? Look at what they did. What they did was that they set up a cashew nut exporting company, right? It's in Lagos. So what Berger is doing is simply this. They will do their contract in Nigeria, they will get paid Naira, they will take that Naira and they'll buy cashew nuts and they will export to Brazil or to Vietnam and they get their dollars. So if you have the capacity to do something like this, that's another way you can hedge your dollar exposure. If you say, well, I'm going to borrow in dollars, you have to have a way to get dollars back. So you can copy Berger if you have that skill. Or you can say, okay, is there any exporter I know that is exporting yams or cashew or pineapple? Can I fund him? So if he's doing 100, he can do 200, and I'm getting my dollar out of Nigeria as this guy is doing his business. That's something else you can do. We've had lots of spaces here on export. If you Google Kalu Aja, Nairametrics, export, I did a detailed article. It's all they had to break into 3 parts. Lots of links to the Nigerian Export Promotion Council's website. You should also go there if you want to do export. That's one of the best websites by any government agency in Nigeria. Those guys are doing a very, very good job. Nigerian Export Promotion Council, government guys, but they are on top of it, right? If you can export, that's one way you can hedge your position. Just making that point out there. If you can't do it, don't try to learn it. You can't learn exports, right? Try to either invest or partner. Don't try to say I'm going to start exporting cocoa, which haven't done it before. You have to know what you're doing. Hi,
Okay.
Mogeri. Hi, how you doing, sir? Mogeri.
Hello, Kalu.
Hi, how you doing?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
All right. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Fine, sir.
And well done. The question I have is for Kevin, but I think he has left. So I just wanted to comment on the floating that we have been advocating. Quite all right. I'm also a reality-based economist who believe in market mechanism, price mechanism. But what actually worries me about completely liberalizing our exchange rate is, what if some kind of hedge funds or all these information-based traders come up with fundamental analysis? Probably they'll just say that the Naira is going to go down, and they'll just start shorting the Naira, and eventually we're going to have artificial fall of the Naira because of the activities of the shorters.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I get where you're going to, and your question has merit. In when we had the South Asian currency crisis,
exactly.
We had those boys go to South Asia, and then they more or less, but they could do that because that was what we call hot money. That's what we call FPI, hot money. So the South Asian countries were trying to finance their growth by issuing bonds with very, very high interest rates. Those are not foreign direct investments that were long-term capital based into the economy. This was mostly their banks issuing euro bonds or currency papers that foreign investors were buying because they were paying very, very high rates, right? So you could buy it, you could arbitrage, you could short it. That's why they're going to that problem, because the rates were high, right? The thing in the way Nigeria is set up is this. Because Nigeria has a strong currency, believe it or not, guys, your currency at 500 naira to a dollar is strong. Because that currency is strong, we can import easy. I went to Abuja. If you go to Abuja, it's a popular supermarket on Wuse2. I'm sure you know it starts with an A. I don't call it name. It starts with an A. They sell water from France in that supermarket. They sell Gary from India, that supermarket. Sparkling water, Gary. Why is Nigeria importing sparkling water? Why? For what reason? If you want to import sparkling water, use your own dollars. So I think that the when you say you want to subsidize that dollar, right, you make it cheap to import. And then because it's cheap to import, you kill the local guys that would have made the same water in Nigeria, right? So I don't also think you should float everything. I think you should have two rates. The government should sell its crude oil. That money should go to its own CBN. They can use that money for their own intervention. If they want to build a road, they want to pay those beggars, they use that oil money. But the export-import remittances window should be floated. If I want to bring dollar to the country, let me sell at my price. If you want to import sparkling water, go to the import-export window. Then that water will be 10,000 naira a crate. Then nobody will buy it. Then if you want to buy that water because you are rich, there's no problem. But you can't bring in sparkling water when there's Ragolis, there's all that stuff in Nigeria. It doesn't make, we don't need it. We don't need it. It's not, it's water. If you have the money, bring it in. It's expensive. People would buy it. It's a luxury, no problem. But we shouldn't take Nigeria's foreign reserves to import sparkling water, Mohammed. That's why I agree with you halfway. We should have to. That's what I think. Yeah.
Kalu, can I keep an example, a real life example?
Sure, go ahead.
So, if you guys remember, in 2020, CBN sanctioned Promasidor alongside other companies for illegal forest trading. So, what happened was that Promasidor was having serious issue at the time to actually pay for imported milk that they buy to produce cowbell. So, I'm sure most of you know cowbell in Nigeria is produced by Promasidor. And I think they service a whole lot of South Africa country because at some point they were my client. Now, what Promasidor did was that they were finding it very, very extremely difficult. So they were going to Ghana, they were going to South Africa, but it was still very difficult. Then they started mopping out dollar from the black market trade, and CBN was not happy with that. So CBN now forced them to then go through the import exchange window, which they did. But that now created a serious problem for them. Now, if you go to buy dollar in that exchange window, you can have your money tied down for months and you don't even get to execute the transaction. So because of that, they now started doing a kind of swap trade because they got a lot of retail parties. So it's a really primary challenge. But if that window has been liberalized, that window has been floated, then they can go there. Those dollar they were buying from the black market will actually come into that window, and then they can then buy it, but at a higher price, which they were willing to even pay anyway. But because CBN won't allow them to buy the dollar even at a higher rate, it becomes a problem. So I don't really know who the policy benefit at the end of the day.
You're right, and this is the thing, Ike. Great example. I mean, you have to allow people to. If I want to buy an Arsenal jersey, how much an Arsenal jersey shirt? Is it important to Nigeria's economy? If it is not important, go to the import-export window, get your dollar at 1,000 or 500, and you import your Arsenal jersey. But if I want to import insulin, I want to import baby food, sure, the CBN can sell to you. Same thing with education abroad. Is it important? Is it not important? What about health? We need to have a conversation over what imports are important, what is not important, and you pay for it. You can't just say you can import anything you like. With it doesn't make any sense. We're winding down, guys. Just thank you guys all for listening. We're going to wind down pretty soon. So I'm going to take everyone, if you don't mind. Gali Musen, Ghali. You've got the floor, sir. Gali, go ahead. Gali going once, Gali going twice. Dolly, Tological, you've got the floor. I don't see you. Let's get Kazim. If we don't have Kazim, we'll sort of win. Kazim, have you spoken? Kazim, I think you've spoken. Kazim Ayode Lasisi. All right, folks. We spent about, let me say, 11, 12, about 2.5 hours here. Kevin, thank you so much. Ike, thanks so much. Jack of all trades, thank you so much, because you guys have brought a lot of color to the conversation. Like, we now have a better understanding. I hope one day we might have a 24-hour spaces. One day we can set it up. So I'm just going to have folks come in and then we can just talk. But for
there
now,
must be item 7. No, I bet. Do 24 hours.
I agree. But it will be interesting to have you guys come in here and we just talk about the economy, exchange rates, imports, forex, employment, just talk about everything. People can come in and ask questions, and we can respond. If we can have for 24 hours, I'll get maybe co-hosters, and we can all be there with item 7 and all that. It will really be interesting to learn from you guys with all this knowledge that you guys have. So I appreciate you guys for dropping in here and making the conversation very, very rich. Thank you so much. Guys, we do this every Saturday, or at least we try to, 7 p.m. We might move to Sunday, but for now, every Saturday, 7 p.m., we'll talk about money, the economy, and of course, your personal finance and how it affects you. My name is Kalu Aja. Guys, get my book. Let's talk about your money. Personal Finance Made Easy, no buzzwords, lots of pictures. You would love it. Yeah, it's on Amazon and of course, Roving Heights. On that note, guys, I'm just going to wish you guys a nice evening wherever you're listening from, in Nigeria, West Africa, or even the US. Have a great day. Let's see what next week brings. It should be interesting to look at the exchange rate and see if it's going to keep on going up or going to start to fall. We won't know. All right, guys, have a good one. Love you all, and bye.